Well, we've taken a look now at what ASP.NET is. We've looked at a very simple animation about what it looks like as it operates, and then we've looked at a short history of ASP.NET and a couple of the requirements. Now, what I want to talk about now is what is ASP.NET not? Okay, kind of a weird question. But first of all and foremost, please understand as you attack this that this is more than just the next version. This is not ASP 4.0, if you will. What's happening to ASP.NET or ASP is the same thing that happened to the operating systems back when Microsoft finally broke with that very stringent marriage to MS-DOS back in the mid-90s. If you remember, the Windows operating system kind of evolved from MS-DOS, and when Microsoft attempted to move into a more graphical user interface, they built their Windows system. As a matter of fact, Windows 3.1 was actually an MS-DOS application. When they broke from that, they still had a very strong foundation in MS-DOS, and Windows 95 was the big release for Microsoft where they really tried to exploit that. And they couldn't get the stability, just the feel and the structure that they wanted. And so Microsoft basically went back and totally re-architected the whole operating system, and NT was the result of that. They went back to square one, and they looked at memory management, how it was dealt with, and security and so forth. The same thing has happened with ASP.NET. Microsoft looked at the web, the way it's being used, the way clients use it, what we expect from it now, the kind of load it was putting on our web servers, security issues, and so forth. And they built that into the .NET framework. And so ASP.NET is part of that .NET framework family. So this thing has been completely redesigned from square one. Now, one of the things that are most exciting about ASP.NET are the language options. There are currently more than 20 languages supported, and just as an example, I'll mention VB.NET, which is, for all practical purposes, the default language of ASP.NET. Visual C#, I don't know how that didn't make it on the list, but Visual C# is out there. We'll talk about language choices in a future video. Visual C++, COBOL, Pascal, Perl, a lot of different languages. Now, the advantage here that Microsoft wanted to give developers is that whatever language you're proficient in, that you haven't lost the investment in time and knowledge in that language. You can bring that directly into .NET and use that. And when the framework compiles this down to the intermediate language level, it can take care of it. And we'll talk about that in a video on the .NET framework shortly. So you have a lot of options here. And by the way, there's going to be more languages supported in the future. Now, ASP.NET utilizes ADO.NET, and this is one of the huge advantages. This is not going to be a course on ADO.NET. Believe me, there's enough information there for a whole nother course. And maybe you can pick that up from VTC a little later. But ADO.NET, ActiveX Data Objects, again, just like the relationship between ASP.NET and ASP 3.0, ADO.NET is not just the next version. Again, it is totally redesigned. For example, in ADO.NET, the assumption is made, the default configuration is that the client is going to be in a disconnected environment. In other words, they're not going to be maintaining a constantly connected, secure environment or connection to the data source. In this case, our web server. And so the web server's memory and resources are all geared toward that kind of environment, and it's made for some impressively improved efficiencies on the web server. Now, we will take a look at some of these. We're going to touch on ADO.NET because later on in our course, we're going to use ADO when we use ASP.NET to connect to a SQL Server database and store some data and retrieve some data and so forth. So you get a glance at this in a brief introduction, but I would highly recommend that if you're learning ASP.NET, to familiarize yourself with ADO.NET as well. There's a number of great third-party books out there. Microsoft has a lot of information on their website about it, as well as a lot of third-party websites that I'll give you a list of those near the end of the course. Now, in the next video, I'm going to talk about some of the new features in ASP.NET so that you'll kind of get an idea on what all the hubbub's about with ASP.NET and why it's capturing so many people's attention.